Hey everyone, Chang here and welcome to my channel. Now, today, this is the Bare Minimum Algebra series. We are talking about multiplying integers. Now, the lovely thing about multiplying integers is even though it is technically a more complicated operations compared to addition and subtraction, the step-by-step, the rules for each of these possible cases are actually extremely simple compared to adding and subtracting integers. If you haven't seen those videos, definitely check those out. But let's move on to multiplying integers. Now, there are four cases that we have to worry about. The first one is when both numbers are positive. The second one is when both numbers are negative. The third one is when one of them is positive, one of them is negative. It doesn't matter which one is positive or negative, but one of them is positive and one of them is negative. Now, the last one is going to be at least one of the number is zero, if not both of them are zero. So let's talk about the first case. The first one is by far the second easiest case to work with. When both numbers are positive, all you have to do is multiply the two numbers like you would normally multiply any two numbers when you are learning basic arithmetic. So, for example, 7 times 2 is 14, and then 3 times 11 is 33, and you can keep on going forever. So for the first case, we should be familiar with them. It should be extremely simple. The second case is slightly more challenging, but actually still extremely simple. That is when both numbers are negative. So what you would do is you first ignore all the negative signs, right? Then you multiply the numbers like it is normal, and whatever the answer you get, remember that the answer is always positive. That is your final answer. So for example, when we're looking at this one, it's going to be a negative 6 times a negative 4. Ignore all the signs. It's just technically 6 times 4, which is 24. And once again, our answer is always positive. That is your final answer. We are done, right? The second one, same thing. You have a negative 8 times negative 9. Ignore the negative signs. Now it's just an 8 and a 9. You multiply them together and you basically get 72, and that is your final answer. So that is the second case. So the third case is when one number is positive and one is negative. So what you're going to do is you're going to once again ignore the sign. The sign is confusing in the beginning, so just ignore it. You multiply the numbers together. Now lastly, this is the key. After you multiply the numbers together, you have your answer. Unlike the second case, this third one, you're going to put the negative sign in front of the answer. So the answer is always negative. Other than that, it's basically simple multiplication. So for example, this first problem right here, you have a negative 2 times 5. Ignore the sign in the beginning. It's just 2 times 5. You're going to put a 10. And then afterwards, the final step is always to put a negative sign in front of the answer. So instead of a positive 10, this is just a negative 10. Plain and simple. This one, once again, order doesn't matter in multiplication, right? So if you have a 10 times a negative 7, ignore the sign. It's just 10 times 7 now. That's 70. And in this case, once again, you're putting the negative sign, and that's your final answer, a negative 70. So for the third case, if it's one positive, one negative, very similar to the second case, you're going to ignore the sign. You're going to multiply the numbers. However, in the third step, you're going to put the negative sign in front of the answer, and that would be your final answer. The fourth case, the final case, is actually the easiest of all, and hopefully you remember it from basic arithmetic. If not, that's entirely fine. If you're multiplying by 0 in any way, shape, or form, it doesn't matter if the other number is 0 itself or a different number, right? The final answer is always going to be 0. And so the fifth case, no, there's no fifth case. All right, so in order to remember the different cases, or at least to double check if your answer makes sense or not, here's the thing for you guys to remember. If it's positive times a positive, the answer is always going to be positive. If it's negative times a negative, the answer is always going to be positive. If it's a positive times a negative, right, this way it's negative, or if you flip it, it's going to be negative times a positive. It is still negative, and I don't think I need to put that up there, but if it's multiplying 0 in any way, it's going to be 0. Now, another way that I normally teach students to remember is a sort of logical relation. So imagine the standard saying of the friend of a friend is a friend, right? The enemy of my enemy is a friend, right? And the friend of my enemy, or the enemy of my friend, is my enemy. And so that is a way to remember if the final answer is going to be positive or negative. So hopefully that helps you in any way, shape, or form. Anyways, There's our lesson in multiplying integers. Remember that there are 4 cases. The first one is both are positive. You multiply it like you would normally multiply any numbers in basic arithmetic. If it is negative, if both numbers are negative, then you ignore the signs, you multiply the numbers together, and that's actually your final answer because the answer is always going to be positive anyway. The third one, if it's 1 positive, 1 negative, you're going to ignore the sign first. You're going to multiply the numbers together, you get that answer, but then you're going to put a negative sign in front of it because the answer is always going to be negative. And the fourth and final case, if you're multiplying by 0 in any way, shape, or form, the final answer is 0. And there's your way of remembering the answer. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you in the next video.